Haul the roll and go. Where am I to go? Meet Johnny, where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and where am I to go?
Hello, and welcome to Where Am I to Go podcast. Today we're at a place that I have always wanted to be at, and I've never actually taken the time to stop. You know, when you're driving down the road and you know that something's there, but you're in a hurry to get to someplace, or maybe they're closed, or something just happens to where you don't have the time or you don't have the ability to stop, and this is one of those places. We are in the middle of absolutely nowhere. I'm gonna term it that way. It's close to a town called Jeffrey City, Wyoming, and we are at a bookstore that is 40 miles from anywhere that anybody would recognize as a place. This bookstore is called the Mad Dog
and the Pilgrim.
Pilgrim.
Yep.
And they are a bookstore that is just unbelievable. When I heard that it was as big as what it is, I didn't really believe it. I walked through the front door and I'm just like, holy smokes, I cannot believe this place. And we are here with Polly. Are you Mad Dog or are you the Pilgrim?
I'm the Pilgrim.
She's the Pilgrim.
Yep.
Okay. Well, and we're going to be talking with Polly today, and she's going to, I don't know how this podcast is going to go. This is going to be an interesting one. We can't even begin to talk about all of the books because there's so many, but just talking to her for the last 10 minutes before we started the podcast, she has more stories and more interesting things to say and more history about this area of Wyoming than probably most people, and I don't know where she would have got it from because she doesn't have any books.
I just sold out.
You just sold. Actually, I kind of believe that. When we first pulled up here, there was a family here of, probably 4 kids and 2 adults. Or no, there were 3 adults here.
Yep, 3 adults.
And they said that...
Actually, 4 adults, 3 kids.
And they said that they'd hauled out 3 boxes of books. Mm-hmm. And she did say that you guys accept credit cards and that she was able to put it on there and she'll be able to pay for it for the next 6 months.
But she'll have something to read while she's paying the bills.
Oh, she will.
Yeah.
And the thing that's kind of interesting is I love bookstores. I've been to Powell Books in Oregon.
Very famous.
And several others around. This place is a small barn-type building, and it is stacked full. Your walkways aren't more than 2.5 feet wide, and stacked floor to ceiling books.
Yeah, it's tight.
How did you get started in the book business?
One book at a time, really. One book at a time.
Just one book at a time.
Literally, I answered an ad.
Okay.
There's my partner. Thank you. I answered an ad. I was going to turn 40, and I was bored, and it was a rainy day, and I answered an ad in the newspaper in Denver. Is where we started in 1989.
To buy one book?
No, to get a job as a bookshop assistant. Because I thought, that sounds fun. We already had a company. We were well established. It was running, it was good. And I thought, I love books. I should apply for this job. And I called the gent, and he said, yeah, you can come. I said, do you have any experience? I said, no, I have none at all. I just love books. And he said, well, come interview and we'll see what happens. And he was running a book search, one of the first in the country. It would, advertise books for sale and books wanted. And he had an antiquarian bookstore in Denver. And I was an English major. I had never heard of a used bookstore.
Really?
I'd heard of the tattered cover. I hung out at the tattered cover all the time, but it was new books. Right?
Okay.
And I'm a lit major, a minor in art history and American history, go all the way through college. No one ever told me there was a used bookstore. And I walked in that bookstore and it blew my mind. The idea that someone could own something. I did my senior paper on Mark Twain, the duality of his personalities, right? I could own something it gives me goosebumps all these years later, that actually existed when Mark Twain was alive. Absolutely rocked my world, literally. I was like, are you kidding me? You don't even have to pay me. I'll work here for free. I've never seen anything like this. This is a whole new universe.
Wow.
And he had me do a commission at first. It was 20% commission on my sales, right? And then pretty soon I was pretty good at it, and it got to be 15%. Then he knocked me down to 10%, and I was still making the same amount of money. And he finally said, just go do your own store. You're fired.
Really? Yeah. What a blessing.
Yeah. And I was like, okay. So my partner Linda and I started literally with one book, like I said. And I gave away books because when you find a good book, you want to share it, right? So
Right.
I would find a really good book, and my friend would, give it to my friends. So I'm still not about owning the books. I'm about having them and being in a channel to get them to where they belong. I mean, the folks that were here today, one couple had never been here before, and the other family had brought them there here as guests. And so I just said, what are you looking for? And he said, I need the second volume of Gulag Archipelago by Solzhenitsyn. I said, yeah, I got it.
Do you know where it is?
Yeah, I do. And I walked over and I got it, and he was like, I don't even believe this. And it's like, it was like that volume number 2 was waiting for him, And I totally believe that, And so everything I look for all the time is to find something that people aren't going to find somewhere else. That's my whole point. There's no reason to come 40 miles from nowhere, and not want great books here. So my idea is to get interesting books, stuff that you can't find elsewhere, and no holes barred.
And where do you buy from? Off the internet, or do you?
I don't buy any off the internet.
You go to estate sales?
I go to estate sales. I get
all over the country?
Anywhere.
Wow.
In 1994, we went on a book buying trip to England, Ireland, and Scotland.
Oh, wow.
And that's when you could ship stuff back by pallet loads. And literally, we shipped stuff back by pallet loads.
Wow.
It was heaven. It was absolute heaven. And so, literally, I'll go anywhere to find. I've bought books off of people at bus stops. I said, are you done with that? Because I would really like that book. And they'll sell it to you. It's like, great. Awesome. Take it back, put it in the bookstore. So we started out just like storing them. And then we had an office space that we rented, and we put them in there. And then we were in a carriage house, and we had our first open shop. And that was in 1990. And we just kept getting bigger. We had 3 different iterations in Denver. And then in Y2K, we just said, let's get out of Denver. So we moved the whole kit and caboodle.
To nowhere.
Yes. Build it and they will come.
Wow.
Literally.
And the thing is you're only open on Sundays.
Yep.
But you must have pretty good internet sales, or not?
I do not sell one single thing on the internet.
So you depend totally on people showing up here on Sunday to come buy books.
Yes. You can do it by appointment as well, and people do that as well.
Okay.
But we had three open shops in Denver, and I got so tired of people.
Right.
And having to be there instead of out buying books.
Wow.
So I just said, and when I first moved here, it was still rotary dial on the phone.
Right.
So you couldn't get any internet at all. Then about a year into it, there was internet, but you'd finally get on and go,
right.
And then they take you back off because you were dragging down the system.
Wow.
So I couldn't do business that way. So I thought, okay, fine, I'll be open. And it was 3 days, but then during COVID, I was like, you know what? I'm just one day. It's one day. Everybody, be safe. Come here on one day, and that's it.
Now, let me put this into perspective for people. When I say the middle of nowhere, Wyoming has a lot of wide open spaces.
Indeed it does, thankfully.
This place sits right on the Oregon Trail.
You're standing right on the Oregon Trail as you're standing right here in front of me.
And we've got, 40 miles to Lander?
40 miles there and about 40 miles to Riverton.
40 miles to Riverton.
Yep.
And then you've got 111 or 100 or something to get to Rawlins.
Yep.
And Muddy Gap, which is the nightmare. I refer to it as the nightmare of Wyoming, because if you're going to have bad weather anywhere in Wyoming, it's going to be at Muddy Gap. And the snows.
The road will be closed.
And it is just one of those horrible places. Mm-hmm. But you're what, probably 20 miles from Jeffrey City?
Yep, about 18. Yep.
Okay, now Jeffrey City itself has a very interesting history in that Jeffrey City was a uranium mine town. And right now when you drive through Jeffrey City, it's really kind of an anomaly because you see a brand new recreation center, you see a fairly new school, you see some really new stuff that has been built there. But when the uranium mines closed down, I don't know what year that was, everybody just kind of packed up and left. And now you've got a gas station that doesn't have gas. Does it have gas?
If there's a single pump, but it is at the Split Rock Cafe and Bar.
Okay. So
And
you
it's
got
a-
a bar and a cafe.
And one pump.
And is the cafe open? I've never ate at the cafe.
I haven't for a long time either, but yes, it's
Okay.
open along with the bar.
And there must be a motel because some people that were here said that they were
Yes.
staying in the motel.
Yep.
But when we're talking about a motel, we're talking about an old 1940s style motel, correct? Yes. And so Jeffrey City was a boom town.
Over, if I understand correctly, almost 7,000 people.
Really?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, that's, the size of Riverton when I moved here, and it was, and they completely, when they shut it down, they picked everything up and left.
And there are no, I mean, really, there's no buildings or anything. They took
Not
everything with them.
Yeah, there were bowling alleys, supermarkets. I mean, it was a thriving town.
That's just amazing. And it wasn't a very long-lived town either, was it? Like 40, 50 years, maybe?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was Home on the Range before that.
That was the name of the town?
Yes.
And why did they call it Jeffrey City?
It was after. Gosh, let me think.
Have a little tour.
I don't want to misquote myself.
Okay. She's
Oh,
going to
sorry.
give us a tour, Martha. Okay. Yeah.
We've got some customers coming in, and they're probably going to be just as amazed as I am.
Whoops. Yeah. Okay. That's sheep bills. Those were our first two sheep, and they have since passed away, and their bills are down.
So I think it was.
Okay,
I think it was
so
like
this
one of the
is,
engineers
walking
for
like
U.S. Energy,
mountain
perhaps,
range.
Okay.
for one of the for the
That's
company town.
foreign
And I just can't
language
remember.
right over there, mountain
I just
area
can't
here.
remember.
Okay.
Sorry.
But it went
I
from,
should know
what did
better
you
than
what
I
did you
don't.
call it to begin with?
Is poetry.
Home on the Range.
Home on the Range.
Yes.
And then they changed it to Jeffrey City.
Yep.
Now, was this a stage stop, or do you know if it was a stage stop, or was it
No.
a stop on the Oregon Trail at all, or everybody just came on through?
Well, technically you could say no. It wasn't a stop. It wasn't a stop.
Okay.
They found Home on the Range was ranchers.
Okay.
It's ranches.
Okay.
And then Home on the Range was there, and you can still see the original cabin that was Home on the Range there as you enter from the east.
Okay.
It's a very cool log cabin.
I'll have to look for that.
Yeah,
I didn't
and
know
I believe
that.
it still says Home on the Range there. Still owned by the same family, within the same family. I once removed or something.
Okay.
But yeah, so technically, because the Sweetwater is not far, you understand you have 500,000 people traveling.
Around here.
Are we okay?
Yeah, we're okay.
You have 500,000 people
This is
traveling
geology
along.
here.
What do they need?
This is,
They need water.
fiction and science.
They need water.
Technology.
So the Oregon Trail follows the water.
This is
Right, and that's the Sweetwater
And
River.
the Sweetwater River is right here.
Right.
And really, Myersville was where the Pony Express and the stage stops were, and Haley Station, which is down at the bottom of Beaver Rim,
Okay.
where the original barn is still there. The
And Beaver
Avenel
Rim
Station.
is a mountain that or the hill that we
It's-
came over
yes, where that
before
vista
from
is just
Riverton and
incredible.
came on
Yes.
down. Yes.
Yep.
And that's a beautiful
one
view
of the
when
most
you look
beautiful
out
views on
over
the
the.
planet.
It's a great big valley that comes into the Wind River Mountains, and South Pass would be just to the south of all of that.
Correct.
And that's where the Oregon Trail came. And this area here, just getting back into history a little bit, the Oregon Trail had some really interesting things along this way. We have Independence Rock, which is probably, 60 miles away? I'm
Yes,
guessing.
just about.
You have Devil's Gate.
Yep.
You have the ice sloughs where
Split
even in
Rock.
January, Split Rock, yeah, the ice sloughs where even in July they were able to pull ice out of the
Especially last
ground. It still was
year.
able
Oh,
to.
it's still there now.
Is it really?
Yeah. It's kind of sulfury ice, but you can dig down. It depends on the year. But sometimes it's a foot down, sometimes it's 3 feet down. But yeah, I mean, the thaw is just now coming out of the ground here. So it's a very severe environment. But the ice slough is definitely something that it was something that they could cool themselves, and they couldn't drink it or eat it.
Right.
But they could, cool things with it and keep their meat cold or whatever. So it was a welcome relief, but it is kind of sulfury.
And this area in Wyoming, in the middle of July, which is Independence Rock is called Independence Rock because they were hoping to be there by Independence Day.
Yep.
So the middle of July, you're coming across this country, and it's going to be 100 degrees out.
And it's going to be buggy.
And windy as all get out.
Yep.
This is going to be a miserable section of Oregon Trail.
Yes, it is.
And so I'm sure that the ice sloughs were just like heaven.
It's just wonderful. Just even to maybe just cool yourself with your kerchief, and put a little chip of ice and, cool yourself. It would be a wonderful thing, I would think, a real luxury.
Yeah, there's just so much history in this area.
It's huge. And it's funny, when we moved here, we didn't even realize it. It wasn't why we moved here. It just spoke to us. It's like, yeah, this is where we belong.
Isn't that amazing
Yeah.
when that kind of stuff happens in your life?
Yes. It's like, be open to that opportunity. Be open to all that stuff that's flying around you all the time that gives you reasons to change your mind.
Yeah.
And it's magnificent, and it really was something that we just felt like we were just very lucky to be here. That's all. We found it and we thought, yep, this is the place.
That is awesome. And to have the guts, I mean, really, to have the guts to pick up from Denver where you have an audience, and pack up and move to 40 miles in the middle of nowhere, and make a business, like you said, build it and they will come.
Yeah.
But who the heck drives through here and goes, yeah, they're going to come patronize our business?
I know. And it's really odd because it never occurred to us that it wouldn't work.
Really?
I think it's a mental frame of mind. If you want something that badly and you're decent at it, it's probably going to work.
Now, do you take over the phone orders and ship stuff out?
If people call and say, do you have a copy of, and I'll say, yeah, I do, then sure.
Okay, let's get your phone number or the way to contact you here, and then we'll do it again at the end of the podcast.
Sure.
Okay.
So phone number is 307-330-4127.
And you can get you just about any time?
Yeah, it's my cell phone. So.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So you have cell service here?
Finally. We actually have broadband.
Oh, do you?
Yes. They put fiber optics because of the mining, right? And the gold companies that have invested around Jeffrey City, and the uranium people, right? They had to have the infrastructure, right? So they brought it from Bear Oil, actually Rollins Bear Oil, and then they brought it to Jeffrey City, and Jeffrey City had like way better than anybody else in this whole for 100 miles.
Really?
Yeah. And then so they brought the fiber optics through there, and then they brought it down to Jeffrey City to here across our driveway, and then all the way down to Lander and all the way up to Du Bois.
Oh, wow.
Right? But they wouldn't dedicate a fiber to us. They wouldn't sell us, lease us. No, they wouldn't do that. But they brought it through the driveway. So it was another 4 years before we got broadband. So we've had broadband for 2 years now. And before that, we had satellite. And there was only a small company out of, it's connected with the phone company up in Moreland.
Oh, RT Communications.
RT Communications.
Yes.
And they brought satellite here.
Okay.
And so I got satellite, I would say probably 15 years ago.
Okay.
And it was very, very new. And so I was able to, I could have done internet, but it's so boring. It's so boring. I mean, entering books, that's not why I do this.
Right.
And it was just like, why am I bothering with this? Just, they'll come.
Okay, so now this brings up another question. Do you know every book that you have in here, or do you have it down on computer to where you go in and you type in, it's all up there in your head?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I don't know why it works. I can't explain it. It's like I had this kind of memory my whole life, but I didn't know what to use it for. You know, and I see the book and I see the spine and I see the author and I see the title in my mind and I just see it. So, and since I put away the books, I better know where it is.
And you can go put your hand on that book at any point in time.
Yeah, unless someone moves it.
That is
What
just
screws me up
unbelievable.
is if someone moves it and thinks that I don't know where stuff is, and I do know where everything is. So that messes me up, and sometimes I'll find things in the strangest places. And it's because they decided against the book or whatever, and they just set it down and figured, well, no one will ever notice that it's not where I got it from. But I do notice, yeah.
No, she's got piles of books. I mean, she's got books on shelves. She's got books on top of shelves. She's got books on the floor stacked up. And this
kind of like Jenga, book Jenga.
Yeah, and this just amazes me. And how many books do you have in here? 100,000?
Close to 70,000.
70,000 books. I couldn't name probably 700 people, let alone 70,000 books.
I can tell you a book. I can't remember. So I feel terrible because a lot of times it's longtime clients, and I can't remember their names, but I know what they collect.
Right, when they walk through the door.
Yes, and it's embarrassing, but it's really true.
Well, I work for a lot of people too, and I'm a flooring installer, so I'm in somebody else's house every single day,
right.
And I see people that are in a different town, and I know that I know them. They'll talk to me, they know me,
right.
And I can't figure out who the heck they are.
And what house you did or whatever.
Yeah, I finally had to get to the point of saying, could you please tell me who you are, where you live, and what part of your house I did, and once I get that, I can carry it right back up on the conversation. I know, everything that I was supposed to know, and I attribute it to walking into a house, and the first place that my eyes go are to the floor, because that's what I'm working on.
Sure.
And I don't pay attention to the person's face or anything else. That's what your same thing with the books. That's amazing.
Yep. Yeah.
And you haven't had Dewey Decimal show up here to organize your books for you.
But I got to tell you that librarians come in and it drives them out of their minds.
Oh, I'll bet.
and I say, it's okay. Calm down. It's all right. Pick a shelf and alphabetize at will.
Just don't mess it up from what I know.
Just remember, keep all the A's together because that's all I care about.
Now, you've got to have some organization to this. I know that when we first came in, we were taken upstairs and we were told that here's the fiction, here's the nonfiction, here's the religion, here's the, like most bookstores. But down here on the main floor, when you first walk in, you're just totally overwhelmed. I'm gonna start with that. And down here, it doesn't seem to have quite the same organization that you have upstairs.
Well, I can't put as many books up there.
Is that what the problem is?
I've got really super duper trusses, but you do have to be somewhat vigilant about weight.
That thought did cross my mind.
Right?
I was wondering what all was going on upstairs as to whether or not I was gonna be okay.
So pretty much the whole shop is by subject matter. So if you were, let's say you say, I'm interested in Africa. Okay. Then I would say, well, that's down at the end of the aisle. And it's that whole column of books there. But let me tell you also that I'll put fiction and nonfiction in that subject area. Because I figure if someone's interested in Africa, they might want to read Out of Africa by Itzhak Denison, or they might want to read Jim Corbett's books on hunting panthers in, India.
Okay.
Or the Himalayas or whatever, and so they'll all be there. Or if you want something on elephants or monkeys or, something like that, wherever they're appropriate, because then that's the way I think. So I can find them for you.
That is so cool.
And I can point you there and say, this is, yes, I have a elephant book. I have a panther book. And then also I have, maybe T.E. Lawrence's, Lawrence of Arabia.
And that's the reason that it looks disorganized to me, is because I didn't put it into the Africa section,
and you're
or the Native American section, or whatever.
Which is over by the door.
I did see that, and you had some books on Indian Sign Language and different tribes and some of the things there.
Yeah.
And
and it's double stacked. Like in the bookshelf, it's double shelved.
I also noticed that you
terrible.
put Custer right next to the Indian section.
Well, you gotta put subject matters that are, correlating to each other.
Right.
But you also notice that I don't do it this much in this shop. In my second shop, I put poetry next to war, so they kind of counterbalanced each other.
Okay.
So yeah, that worked. But the energy, right?
Okay.
But yeah, cowboys and Indians are over there. They're all together. Yep.
I thought it was only
Soldiers
appropriate
and
since
military
Custer.
history and yep.
Thought it was only appropriate since Custer got a haircut.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, and subject matter. You've got books of every subject that you could
try.
imagine.
I try. I
I'm
really love subjects, so the odder the better. I mean, if someone called me up and said, "Hey, Polly, I've got a history of clothespins in medieval France. Are you interested?" And I would say, "Oh yeah, I gotta have that book." One of my favorite books ever is a whole history of the hangman of old England.
really.
So it's like all of their histories, all of their names, what king they, were lynching people or beheading or whatever. And it's just so odd that someone spent their whole life writing a book about that. And it's the only one I ever run across that was just on that subject. So that's the kind of stuff that's like, how cool is that?
Oh yeah.
My other favorite book that I ever found in nonfiction was a railroad done by the railroads as they were coming transcontinental, right? And it was how to build a railroad town on the
Really.
frontier.
Oh, that would have
It
been
was
awesome.
So I had it exactly one day. I mean, literally, I put it on the shelf. It was gone the next day. But it was the coolest book. Where to situate your water pipes, where to put your water tower, where to put the church, where to put the school, where to put the mercantile, how many square feet it should be, how to build that, planking for the sidewalks, how far you did the sidewalks, how to build a depot, how to bring the trains in there. I mean, it was just so cool.
And you
it
didn't
was-
even get a chance to read the whole thing?
No, and it's like one of the only books I was ever sorry that I sold before I read.
And how many of these books in here have you read?
Thousands.
Are you a speed reader?
I'm pretty fast, but I don't read all. I have not read. It's not physically possible for me to have read all these.
Oh, no.
But I will say that I always read at least 1 or 2 pages at least to see if I'm interested. And if I'm not interested, I don't buy it.
And what books, what kind of books do you personally like?
The history of sheep and its influence on civilization.
The history of sheep and its influence.
Yeah.
Okay, now here's one for you.
It's
There's
astonishing.
Banditti of the Plains.
Of course.
Do you have the original copy?
No, but I've had some really early ones.
There's a guy.
Talk about burning books.
There's a guy in Warland that has the original
That would
manuscript.
be a place I would imagine it would be.
That you know who I'm talking about?
No,
Oh, anyway.
don't tell me. I might call him.
Well, you won't get it from him.
No, of course not.
I've actually-
dead cold hands.
I've
right?
actually touched the
Very
original manuscript. It was found in an attic in Buffalo, Wyoming.
Is that so? Doesn't that make you just get goosebumps?
We'll talk
That's
about
so
this
cool.
later. Yeah, Banditti of the Plains, just for my listeners. Kind of a weird title. It was written by Acer, was the guy, I can't remember.
Mercer.
Yes, A.C. Mercer. And what it does is it chronicles the Johnson County Wars, and it names names, who was the bad guys, who was the good guys, and how everything went. It's pretty good Wyoming history book. Wyoming government did everything they could to shut this book down, from burning it.
Growers.
The stock growers, yeah, which at the
Stock
time
Growers
was
Association.
Wyoming's.
That was the government.
That
You're
was the
right.
government. And they did everything they could, including hiring people to go to libraries to destroy this book and buy every copy that they could. It is now a fairly common book. You can find it in different places. But I know that there's
The
an
University
original.
of Oklahoma reprinted it, and it's got a lovely reprint of it.
They've got an original copy at the museum Hoofprints of the Past in KC, Wyoming, which is right by where the Hole in the Wall was, where the Hole in the Wall gang hung out. And they've got another one in Douglas at the State Museum
I did not know
in
that.
Douglas. I have seen both of those copies when I did podcasts at
That's
those
neat.
two museums. But the original manuscript was gone for, well, nobody knew where it was.
100 years.
And somebody called this gentleman, who's a historian,
Good.
involved in a lot of things in the area. In fact, he's got a podcast called Linda. What's Clay's podcast? Sagebrush. Sweet Smell of Sagebrush.
Okay, that's a good
Yeah,
title.
the Sweet Smell of Sagebrush, where he covers a lot of different Wyoming history. He talks about the Johnson County Wars. He talks about Cattle Kate and some of the other people that were instrumental in the cattle era times.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And his podcast is very interesting. Again, that's
That sounds
called...
neat.
What did I just say?
Sweet Smell of Sage.
Sweet Smell of Sagebrush. Jeez.
It's okay. No, it happens. You get around all these books and all these titles and all these things in your mind, and it kind of goes. Bzzz.
I have that problem anyway. I could be talking about something and have it right there at the top of my head and forget it just as quick.
Yeah,
But
pretty common.
but he was doing a talking tour around the Bighorn Basin, and he was carrying that manuscript with him, and it was just fascinating to see. Like you said, shivers up and down your spine
Yeah.
when you see the original handwritten. Really, really cool.
Yeah, one of the first, really, I would say, keystone first-person accounts, of the true Western dilemma.
Oh yeah.
I mean, everybody knows now that really, if you really want to be honest, cows and sheep are just fine together.
Yes,
They're
but at the
just
time,
fine.
but everybody
But
was.
it's fencing versus non-fencing. It's it's ownership. It's all those territorial things that are so huge. It's water rights. It's grass. It's all that, and it's everything in the world that's important to anyone in Wyoming.
Yes,
Water, dirt, grass,
I think more people have been killed over water than anything else in Wyoming.
and they will continue to be so until the end of time. In my opinion.
Oh yeah, yeah. We're
In
very
the end,
arid.
that's really the only thing that matters: dirt and water.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's a chilling reality, but it's something that I don't know. I just think it's such an astonishing thing to turn on a tap and have water.
Yeah.
I do, and to have our own well here. I mean, I've lived on city water my whole life, and to have my own well, it was a revelation. I know that seems such a silly thing to someone in Wyoming, but when you're from the city, you're depending on someone else for your water.
Oh yeah. You're depending on
And you
somebody
don't even
for
think about it.
for everything.
For everything, for your sewer system, for your, and when you're out here, you're on your own, and your learning curve is huge.
Oh yeah. When yeah.
I mean, it's huge, and you buck up and learn, or you don't make it.
Yeah.
And it's still that way in Wyoming.
It is that way.
I-
We are very independent people.
Yes, and we're clever and industrious, and we revel in the fact that we can do things for ourselves, and it has nothing to do with gender. Some of the toughest ranchers I ever met in Wyoming are women.
I shouldn't say this, but I heard a quote a long time ago. It says, "Wyoming, where men are men, and the women are too." And the women work just as hard as
And they
men,
had to.
and they
Double time.
did. Oh yeah, yeah. Those old ranch women.
It's mind-blowing. The idea that they would get up and, and with children, right?
Right.
And cook for the ranch hands, cook for the family, clean up, figure out where you're going to get firewood. Try that in Wyoming. If you've ever
Right.
camped in Wyoming, that's its own challenge in itself, right? You do all those things. Keep an even heat in the stove.
Do you do a wood cook stove?
I have done it. I'm not good at it.
I was going to say it's pretty
I'm not.
rough to cook in a wood
It is
cook
really
stove.
hard. And those women did that every day of their lives.
And then on top of that, they went out and they gathered cattle with their husbands.
Right? They rode. They
were
roped. They kept the chickens, kept the, whatever. They were sheep tenders. They did the sheep camp. They just fed all the, it's down on my knees humbling when I think of the people that settled this country.
I agree with you 100%. And you know, here, because of the weather elements and the distances to places and stuff, people have to be tough.
You know, in that 100-year winter that we had, want to go there. I mean, you know, the road was closed all ways from here for 42 straight days.
Wow.
You know, and you prepare for that. I'm not saying that, but in a sense, it was more isolating than COVID was, because at least with COVID, you can go into town with a mask on, you know, but you couldn't. You physically couldn't go anywhere.
Right. Yeah, you were physically bound.
It was so bad. The kill off of the wildlife here was so bad. Linda and I did not see anything living, not like a bird, nothing, from the beginning of December until April. It killed all the deer that we see along the river. It killed everything. It was so many feet. There was no feature left up here on top of the rim, because the snow had made it all flat. It looked like a desert of white. And all the draws, the arroyos, all of them, they were all filled in. We're talking 20, 60 feet, you know, because they're drifting here.
Because they're drifting. You have the wind here, yeah.
And it filled in everything. It was stunning in its vastness. And, you know, yes, I had something to read, but it was tough. It was beat down tough.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot of times in winter. I mean,
Indeed
sometimes, usually more for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, but
yep. But really, you know, between the wind and the extreme and being near the river and the cold, it's really tough here. And then after it's tough, you get mosquitoes. It's the best of all worlds.
It's best of all worlds.
You get out of your car and run into the bookshop. And you get your books and you run back to your car.
Out. Yes.
In June, late June. Yeah, super special. When it gets really hot, then it's not quite so bad. But
well, it's always nice when spring comes for the 4 days that it's here.
yeah. Boy, that's extravagant. 4 whole days? Where do you live?
Well, no, it happens once in March, once in April, and once in May.
There you go. I know people think that, you know, you exaggerate when you talk about Wyoming weather, but it is extreme. It is extreme. And
we can have...
It's part of what we're proud of, too. I mean, it's like you make it through a winter here, you feel like you've done something. You know, I mean, you've accomplished something. And, you know, even in what you would say some of our larger cities here, you know, Casper, Casper got hammered. I mean, they got hammered, you know, a year and a half ago. I mean, it was tough there. It was tough to get around. It was tough to get anything done, right? And if you're working remote, well, that's great. But most people here are very physical workforce.
Oil field and
exactly
mining and
exactly. And they tried so hard to keep the dirt roads to the oil fields, you know, to check the you know, drill sites and everything. And it was impossible. I mean, YDOT in the county people spent days going 100 yards.
Well, the thing is once you get that 100 yards, the windstorm comes up and it blows it all right back in. And then you're not just digging out 6 feet, you're digging out 10 feet because the drift is...
It's exponential.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's real. I mean, it is real. And people in Wyoming talk about the weather, and it's a serious subject. It's not like a joke in the city where it's like kind of a frivolous thing. And I'm not discounting that in places that have these horrible tornadoes and all these things. I'm not saying that. But normal weather conversations are not really city talk.
Right.
It's not really city talk. It's very much talk in Wyoming and rural areas because it impacts you every day.
Something else that people may see as they're traveling across Wyoming in a lot of places, we have these great big fences that are like 10 and 12 feet tall. And they're just kind of out in the middle of different places. They don't have a beginning. I mean, they have a beginning and they have an end. You know, they may only go for a mile, but they're not connected. They're not keeping anything out. And a lot of people from other states don't realize that those are snow fences. And what it's designed to do is they set them up in places where the snow traditionally drifts, and it causes it to drift on the back side of the fence and keeps it from going across the roads to where they can keep the roads clean and stuff.
Exactly.
And another thing when we're talking about weather is it's not uncommon to have a day that's 60 degrees and a night that's 10 below.
Oh, it happened, you know, like, yeah. I mean, it happens constantly.
3 days ago.
Yeah, we had a hard frost 2 days ago.
Right. And
I mean,
and this is
hard
Memorial
frost.
Day weekend. So
Correct.
and I know that where
And
we
it'll be
live,
in June,
you guys are at what elevation here? 6,500 feet?
65, 62.
Yeah. So you're at 6,500 feet. We're at 3,500 where I live, and we were cold. I think it got down to 32 degrees or something. But the next day it was 80.
Yep.
I mean that 50-degree difference is not an uncommon thing,
No.
and it's so hard on livestock and
It's
everything
terrible
else.
hard
You know
on them.
the poor
And the trees
and
and
the
the-
trees. Yes.
Any living thing, it's brutal. It's just brutal.
And I've never really understood why here in Wyoming and probably a lot of other places, they always want a lamb and calve in January, February, and March. And January's pretty okay because
Yeah,
we
'cause
usually
there's a-
end up with
there's
our
a window.
Chinooks.
Yep.
And if you could have all of them drop, in a 1 week period when it's nice, you're okay. But it turns around in February and we end up with 40 below in February.
And then the wind starts, and
Yeah.
there's nothing more chilling to a baby lamb or a baby calf than that.
And then you end up
And
with
then the
those
rain.
big fluctuations in temperature,
Right.
and they can't
Freezing
keep up
rain,
with it.
Freezing cold,
Yes.
and the wind. It
And
just-
then the 80-degree day.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough. They are. I mean, they're magnificent.
Now here we're in a bookstore.
I know, we're
and
talking
we've
about
talked all
weather.
about Wyoming and weather. Isn't this typical?
Yes, it is. There's no subjects barred here. It's wherever it flows to.
And that's the way my podcasts always go, is wherever it takes me. So here we are. Now another thing that's pretty interesting is when you first walk in, you've got a wood carving of a man here, but the one that gets me the most is you've got a lioness.
Actually, it's a lion. It's
Oh.
a young male Syrian lion.
Okay.
Yep. He was,
Syrian from Syria? Okay.
he's from 1901, and he was from a big game hunter in St. Louis. And I bought it from his estate.
And he is good looking. I can't believe he's over 120 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's an easy keeper shop cat.
Is he?
Dust once a year. But no, he's really fantastic, and because he's from the forested area, of course, the mane is not as prominent as from the grasslands.
Okay.
Yep.
I did not realize that.
But if you really look at him, you'll see it's
I didn't walk around back to check.
there you go. It's anatomically correct. Anyway, big teeth.
Yes,
That
yes.
coming at you at 40 miles an hour, you better have a big gun.
Almost worse than a blizzard.
Almost. At least it's centralized there.
There you go. You can see where it's coming from.
Yeah.
So
But
this,
I just love artifacts. I love beautiful handmade things from different centuries that have intrinsic beauty in them. I just love them. So yes, we decorate with all those things, and it just adds to what we do.
now what's the oldest book you have in here?
I was going to ask that too.
Probably the most common question we get. I have one from the 1200s.
You got to be joking.
Yeah, but I have it right now. I have it in a safety deposit box because it was getting too dry. So I had to get it into some humidity to treat it. So I'll have it back here. But yeah, so I would say most of our books are from 1700s on.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
still an old book.
Yeah, it is.
And
300 years is a
yeah,
decent age.
and the pages are still okay in most of those, or
Yeah, I mean. just
oh,
pull this
she
one out.
grabs one right here.
Let's see. Now, this one is kind of rough, but this one is, let's look at it here.
And it's written in English. I know a lot of those older books
yes, it is.
are
But
German
it's-
and
yes. It's Ovid's Metamorphosis, and it is from 1717.
wow.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And yes, still very readable.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
In fact, the paper from here is probably better than it is from the 1880s on. You can judge a book by its cover. You can tell the leathers from a decade. You can tell the different leathers and papers from a decade. The prints, what we would call the typeset, not call it font now, but the typeset. These would all be handmade laid paper. And what they did was they smashed the flax and the linen and everything in the cotton, and they would smash it onto a screen. Have you ever seen paper made?
Yes.
Fascinating, right? And then they would put their impression on there, so that the printer's paper's impression is on there. And you take it up to light. It's like when you have bonded paper.
Right.
See that. So all these are handmade papers, hand done leather. Sewn spines instead of glue would be that. And when they did use later on, they used horse glue.
Okay.
Which is why bookworms love the spines of books.
Oh.
Because it's organic matter, right?
Now you're not talking human bookworms, you're talking real bookworms.
Real bookworms. Yeah.
Wow.
You'll see a hole all the way through the spine or all the way through the book. And it's because they love that horse glue.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah. But back to my paper thing. Paper is a product of the economy of the decade.
Okay.
Okay. So when you have a depression, you have terrible paper. Right? So the 1890s, 1930s, the 40s during World War II when they were rationing things.
Right.
Right? It's very brittle because they put wood pulp in.
Okay.
Because wood pulp is cheaper than cotton, linen, flax, any of the seeds. Because they had to have those for the uniforms and they had to have those for the equipment for the troops.
Now, did they use hemp at all with?
I've never run across any, but I'm sure they did.
Okay.
It depends on the region.
It's just a real strong fiber. I was
Indeed.
wondering if.
Yeah. But you have to grow it.
Right.
It would have to be grown. Because you got to remember, you got to take it by ship somewhere.
Well, you'd still have to grow your flax and
right,
the other
but that's not
cotton.
as common in the United States as it is.
Okay.
As hemp isn't as. But yes, I'm sure they did. I've just never done any homework on hemp to see what region it would have been concentrated in, because the printing house would be the parameter there.
Okay.
And remember, because transportation is so concentrated, then your available your available material would be where the printer would.
So Linda just drags a book up here by James Lane Allen. Mm-hmm. It's called The Reign of Law, A Tale of Kentucky Hemp Fields.
There you go.
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you ought to stick that up there with the Bridger Trail. I'm getting the book.
There you go.
Yeah, we're going to shop when I'm done.
Okay.
I've kind of been
Good
looking,
news.
but...
You buy some so I can go out and buy more.
There you go.
Right.
I've got a pretty fair library myself, but
It sounds like you have a good reference library.
I do. It's probably not. Well, it's not nearly as involved as this one.
You
but
would like.
I would be.
There's
in
still time.
And the thing is I don't have time to read all the books that I get, but I have reference to. I have reference to them.
The point is, you'll have it there when you want to use it.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
And you're saving it to make sure that information is saved. And I say this all the time. This is like one of the last bastions of democracy and free speech.
Oh.
Because I am not censoring what I put in here. And I don't care what you buy. The more interesting, the better. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that you can't just push a button and delete this.
The thing that's
sad. You can't
sad,
cut a page out of this and say, well, you don't need that information because, well, you're just not ready for that information.
That's very true, and I find it very. I don't know if I want to use the word appalling or what word I want to use, that you cannot find encyclopedia set anymore.
Yeah,
and
they're great time capsules.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
But they take up a lot of space, right? And people think I can get it on a computer. You know what? You probably can't.
Well, no,
you probably can't.
History is constantly evolving. Linda and I, when we've gone to some different museums, we went and traveled the South, and the history of the Civil War is being so changed right now to be. I guess I don't really know. I don't really want to get into that aspect of things, but everything has become a total slavery issue instead of a war between the states, an economic war. There was so much more involved to the Civil War than just slavery. Slavery was an issue, but it was just one of the issues.
One of many issues.
And they've
you have the industrialism versus the old way of doing things, and you have all this innovation coming in, and saying, no, we're manual labor. That's the cheapest way to produce something is manual labor.
Right.
We don't want to make a machine to do that. We just want to stay with this because it works. It's it's capitalism. It's all these things working. And unfortunately, the idea of taking care of your workers was not in the formula.
Right.
For either side.
No. You had your company store. You had your
sweatshops
mines
in New York City. There were shoe factories in New England. There were all these things. Yes, they were their own person, but they were still just as poor.
Yes, and it's kind of interesting. We've toured a couple of different mines, and we were at one. I don't remember where it was. They were talking about the reason that child labor was so important was because the man of the house got killed in a mine accident, and they were told that they had to leave within 24 hours out of their home.
Yeah.
And so they sent the kid to work.
Home.
Yeah, they sent the kid to work in order to be able to keep their home and to be able to eat.
Yeah.
It was, like you said, across the board.
Across the board.
People have used people forever.
Since the beginning of time.
And none of us are immune from it. Things get bad again, they will turn right around and use us all over again.
I personally feel, it's the same thing. This people moving through and displacing other people.
Right.
That's been since the beginning of time too.
Oh, yes.
I feel very, very cognizant of that fact standing where I do. I have had some amazing people, wonderful people come in and say, my grandfather said his hunting ground was where your house is. His hunting camp.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm like, wow. Wow. And if you ask me to share this right now, I tell you I'll fight for it.
Right.
And I would do exactly what indigenous people did.
Oh, yeah.
If it was reversed. And I am truly, truly grateful that that I'm here, and I am always recognizing the history of where I'm standing and the sacrifices that were made. Both sides, once again, both sides, that enabled me to stand here and have, first of all, as a woman, to have my own business.
Right.
To be able to own land.
Oh, yeah. That wasn't available back in the late 1800s.
No, it was not.
Nope.
So all those things I think about every morning when I wake up, and I am so truly grateful for all that has gone before me and all the possibilities of the future.
And now to bring this back full circle, it's all in books from the time. And Wikipedia doesn't censor it.
Nope.
And Mark Zuckerberg doesn't censor it.
Not telling you their take on it whatsoever. It is each individual person that may have spent their entire life writing one book so that you could read it 200 years later.
Right.
And have a totally different perspective.
Yep.
That's so cool.
It is.
It is.
I picked up at a library book sale, and I think it's a reproduction set of books, the Encyclopedia Britannica. It's a 3-volume set from it was before the Constitution was, before 1776, so it must have been 1740 or 50 or something. Yep. And it's just fascinating to go through there. If you can read it.
Right, because it's Old English.
F's look like S's, and
yes.
the letters. Yes. So you gotta read about 6 pages before you can figure it out.
Yes.
It is so beautiful to see that. It is just, the words are so, if you read the Jefferson Papers or anything, just read any of it's just gorgeous. The writing is just so fluid, so elegant, and the typesets are.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you can see that one had it's called a long S.
Okay.
It's called a long S. That's written on a long S.
Looks like an F. Yeah.
So it's called a long S.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad somebody knows what it's called, because I just get confused.
But you're right. After you read 4 or 5 pages, you got it.
Right.
You got it.
Yeah.
And then it harkens back to Old English as well. So you'll have E's on the end of words that we don't put E's on the end of the word anymore. I can't think of anything in specific, but there's an E on the end.
Right.
After two consonants,
Well, a lot of the spellings are different.
Yes.
All the way through. Yeah.
Yes. So there'll be an extra E, and you're like, that's not the way it's spelled, but it's the way it was spelled.
Right.
And we just Americanized it. And, to me, English is the most amazing language. I've studied 6 different languages, and English is so amazing because it is so accessible. It's annoying.
It's very annoying.
Because we are so accessible. We took all these other languages, and if we didn't have a word for it, oh, well, if it's French, who cares, right?
Exactly.
We'll
Spanish.
We'll just take it and Americanize the French word. Or we'll take the Spanish word and we'll Americanize that. Or we'll take the Latin root and use that. Or we'll use a German word because, that's what that is. And we just use it. And nobody even thinks anything of it. And then when you ask someone, that hasn't had phonics, spelling it blows their mind. Because you cannot fathom why something is spelled the way it is because you're thinking in English, but it's not an English word. And the root word is in English and the ending is not in English. And so you're trying to teach that to someone and say, no, it doesn't make any sense, but that's the word.
See, and I always had problems in school because the teachers say, spell it like it sounds. Why in the hell do they have an E on the end of the word make?
Right?
Or why is Polish and polish the same dang word?
And, it must be terrible to learn English as a second or third language.
I would
it just
think.
must be mind-blowing because of those things.
Yes.
And it's all context.
Yes.
It's the context of the sentence. But if you don't understand the context of the rest of the sentence, of course you won't know whether it's Polish or Polish.
Right.
Unless it's capitalized. But it could be capitalized because it's the first letter in the first word of the sentence.
And see, just to be a jerk, if I'm writing something, I'll say, or if I'm talking to somebody, I'm going to say, I'm going to go out and polish my car. Just to be, I do it all the time. Or when I write a letter to dear somebody, it's DEER, just because, or family, I spell it PHAMILY. I do it just to be obstinate. But these rules have rules, but all the rules are made to be broken.
There's exceptions.
Not exceptions. They're all made to be broken.
But that's so American too.
It is.
And it's, in the core of it, it's very English as well. So, yeah.
Sorry to go down these little rabbit holes. But
this is the way it flows. Sometimes it's just the way it goes.
Well, this is so cool. And I appreciate you taking your time. You ready to wind down, or do you want to talk more?
No, thanks for stopping by finally. I get that all the time. I always go by and I've always wanted to come in, but I never have time because I'm going to Denver or I'm going to,
Well, you're 40 miles from anywhere. You're going someplace, and it ain't here.
Yes. Except sometimes.
Yes. Yeah. You could only hope that your car breaks down in your driveway so that you have the opportunity to come in.
Got you covered.
You were telling the story that somebody was, I can't remember who you said it was, always kept gas here because...
We always keep gas here because people run out of gas here all the time. They're from the city. They think there's a convenience store in every corner, and it's miles. You better top off. Here's my lesson for the podcast. Buy books and top off your tank everywhere you go in Wyoming.
And
I never let it go past a half a tank.
And do not think that you're going to make it from one side of the state to the other in the new electric vehicle, because there is not a place. Your places to charge are going to be 100, 150 miles in between.
We talk about that in the shop all the time. Wyomingites would be much more into getting an electric vehicle if there was somewhere they could go with it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then the cold.
We can't get there.
Then the cold wipes you out too.
We can't get there.
Yeah.
It's not that we're like against all electric vehicles. It's that it's not practical for us yet. When they make a battery that's practical,
that'll do 1,000 miles.
Yes, but until then, it's not practical. I can't even get groceries. In
an electric vehicle.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just not. And then if I did, where's the charging station?
Yeah, when you go shopping, you're going to have to leave it charged someplace and walk to the grocery store.
Exactly. So it's just not there yet.
It's crazy.
Just not there.
Yeah, and that's me too. I've always thought the electric vehicle would be great for... In fact, I wanted to do a conversion back in the 80s.
Right.
Convert a little Volkswagen Rabbit or something like that and have a little electric car. I always thought that'd be just great, but you sure weren't going to take it from Basin, Wyoming to Cody, Wyoming.
No. And then it's got to have the power to go through the weather too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I know how it sucks the gas out of a car, so I'm pretty sure
Well,
it's sucking bolts out of there too.
we've all tried to start our gasoline cars in 20 below, and sometimes that just
You
getting
better-
up in the
better
morning
have a
and
good
getting
cold
going.
crank.
That's right. That's right. And sometimes that doesn't even cut it.
No.
So, anyway, one more time, your phone number as to how
Yes.
people could call if there was a book that they were looking for that you more than likely have, because I guess that there's more than 70,000 books that have been written, but I think you've got a pretty good handle on maybe getting
I'm working
people
at it.
maybe getting people books that they can't find anywhere else.
That's my job.
And your
That's
phone
what I
number
love the
is
most. 307-330-4127.
okay, 307-330.
4127.
Okay, and
Mad
this
Dog
is
and the Pilgrim.
Mad Dog and the Pilgrim.
Mm-hmm.
And real quick, why is it Mad Dog and the Pilgrim?
Linda and I don't like cutesy titles to
Okay.
things. So we were brainstorming, and Pilgrim is because I'm descendant from Mayflower people.
Okay.
That's easy. And Mad Dog was just like, she was like, well, yeah, I like that.
Okay.
So
Well-
really, literally, that's how it happened.
I live in a straw house. And so
Nice.
my email address has always been no bad woof.
Oh, nice.
And that's because I don't want them huffing and puffing and
That's
blowing my
right.
house down.
That's right.
And so I
It's a
just
challenge here.
my little moniker or whatever would be Bad Dog. I go by that
like
all
it.
the time.
Okay.
So
All right.
and I guess as far as obedience and some of that, I probably fall into more of the Bad Dog category than what I do.
I'm getting a hint of that.
A little bit rebellious here and there. And,
It's a good trait.
is it?
It is. It keeps you curious and interested, which I assume is why you do these podcasts.
It is. You know, I love doing these podcasts because I get to talk to people like you or like curators of museums and find out backstories and stuff.
It's a wonderful world out there.
It
if you're
is.
willing to ask a question.
You're going to get to my next point. You're going to like this part. I always finish my podcasts out, and I finish them out by saying the world is full of wonder. You need to get out there and explore. When you're driving between Lander and Jeffrey City, you need to stop at this store and explore the treasures that are in here.
Thank you.
And everybody have an absolutely wonder-filled day. Thank you very much.
Of course.
And don't forget to check out our Facebook page at Where Am I to Go podcast. We usually post pictures of different places that we go. And we also have a website at whereamitogo.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
All the roll and go, where am I to go? Meet Johnny, where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and where am I to go?